Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm going to call this meeting of the City of Boise's Public Works Commission to order. And let's start with a quick calling of the roll. If you are here, please let me know. Commissioner Ellis,
Present.
Commissioner Morgan,
I'm here.
Commissioner Wernz, Commissioner Collette,
Here.
Commissioner Lockett,
Here.
Commissioner Pagan,
Here.
Commissioner Thornfeld.
Here.
All right, and welcome to our new members of the commission, Commissioners Pagan and Thornfeld. Our first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our last regular meeting on November 1st of 2023. And with that, I would entertain a motion. Commissioner Morgan,
Chair, I so move.
do we have a second?
I second it.
A second from Commissioner Ellis. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And that takes us to our regular items on the agenda, the first being additional topic consideration, and I will turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. Couple things wanted to present to, or not present to, but discuss with the commission. One, apologize for the scheduling mishaps the last couple of meetings. The first was we had a lack of quorum, and the second one, there was a noticing issue. We didn't have there's specific requirements how we noticed the meeting, and we missed one of them. So we chose the more conservative path and decided to cancel. So I apologize for that. I also want to spend just a couple minutes talking about how we got to this particular format for the commission. So in years past, I would say 30 years ago, maybe even longer ago, the Public Works Commission was serving a role that was a much more detailed kind of review of budgets. There were a fair amount of appeals that were happening because we were a fairly new utility. So we'd have appeals on things like connection fees. So if you were a new developer or a homeowner that wanted to connect to the system, or maybe you were a business that wanted to connect to the system, there were sometimes appeals of that process. So it was very much a commission that got into some of the minutia of the work. I'd say maybe 10 years ago, that transitioned to some of the kind of getting into larger topics, some of the bigger initiatives that we were undertaking. And then probably, 2 years ago or so, year and a half ago, we had conversations with then commissioners, acknowledging that we maybe weren't presenting the information in ways that was really helpful. It felt like we were doing a lot of talking at you all. And I think there was some frustration, maybe both ways, not anything that was too dramatic, but kind of a sense of like, hey, is there a better way to do this? And so we had conversations with that commission at the time to try to figure out a better way to, frankly, utilize your skill sets and your perspectives. And so where we landed was we decided to have the commission give us feedback on several initiatives that we had underway at the city within Public Works, and then make a decision on what one or two topics would you like to do a deep dive into, with the idea being that you could serve the organization better because we could get more specific feedback on the very, and sometimes challenging issues for us that we'd love to hear from you all on, but also then give you the ability to talk to your community members that you interact with to provide feedback to us. And so that's where we landed. We reset the commission as of, I think it was last year. So coming into this fiscal year, so our October of 2023 was when we reset, and the topic that was chosen to focus in on this year was the recycled water program. And so you're going to hear more detail from the recycled water program staff on kind of a state of where we are. We're going to give you some background information because we do have some new commissioners. We'll give you some background information on the recycled water program, and then also dive into some of the more pressing issues that we frankly want to hear from you on. There are issues that have either come up during the tours of the advanced water treatment pilot, or in some instances, areas where we just want to hear your feedback and areas that we think the community might be interested in or concerned about, and then hear your perspective. So just wanted to level set there on kind of how we got to today. The other topic that you're interested in and that I think we'll be ready for next commission meeting to kind of give an introduction to is the solid waste strategic plan. So that's us revisiting all of the recycling, compost, trash programs, the orange energy bag program. So those are, that plan is, we haven't really revisited that for probably about coming up on 10 years. And so it's time now to revisit what are the program offerings? Do we want to evolve those? Looking at maybe the fee structure, how that's set up. Do we want to evolve that as well? So those will be coming as part of the solid waste strategic plan. Okay, let me pause there for a second, and then I'll jump into the next section. But see if there are any questions on that.
Any questions from the commission? All right, seeing none, back to you.
Okay. Oh, sure. Go ahead, Colin.
Just one other thing to add is the timing. As Steve mentioned, with the reset, we previously were on a monthly cadence with commission, and it was feeling like there was this back and forth of like having to produce a lot of content. So we landed on a reset for every quarter. And like Steve mentioned, there was a miss, but we should be getting back to that schedule where we're on every quarter and able to do some deeper dives. And the last thing I would mention, and we'll come back to it at the end of the meeting today, is that I would say this is very much up for us to continue to form as we see, as you all see fit. And so we'll stop after every meeting and just would love to hear from you all on how it's going. Is it being an effective use for you all to provide feedback, meaningful, so that we can continue to make the best use of you all's perspectives, professions, and that we can continue to get that input for the long-term strategic value that we're seeking. So just a reminder that it's, nothing is set in stone. We did this reset in the hopes that we could maximize the value on both sides, but we'll continue to check that and certainly welcome the feedback if we haven't met the mark or we need to adjust things as we go. So
Thanks for that. I appreciate it. So then moving on to the other topics that we could discuss, I kind of wanted to open up the floor to the commission. Any questions on things maybe your neighbors are asking you about, I don't know, compost program, or are there other topics that you wanted to discuss? We wanted to set aside some time just to kind of have more of like a conversation at the beginning of the meeting before we jump into the specific topic that we wanted to cover. I have one topic that I want to share is that we'll have the budget book ready for you. It's getting close for the FY25 budget. We'll have that for you. We're going to just email that to you. You can review that at your leisure, and any questions you might have, just let us know. We're not going to cover it formally within the commission meetings. So with that, any questions from the commissioners, any feedback, things you're hearing, anything from your perspectives?
Any questions, comments, or input, commissioners? Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you. I was going to give a shout out to Lisa Knapp as she helped out Riverstone with the Give Back campaign for the compost program. And we got the Timber Creek came and dropped off twice because there was a really awesome mistake. And we're using it to do whole gold culture mounds where we're going to grow strawberries and whatnot. And then hopefully some pumpkins in time for the fall carnival. But it's really exciting. We took pictures. We couldn't believe how excited people could be with the Timber Creek truck showing up. So thank you for that program. And we'll definitely be talking about it a lot so others know about it too.
Great. Thank you for the feedback. We'll make sure we get that to Lisa. Thank you.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Any other input from the commission? Questions? Commissioner Wertz.
Chair, first I'll say I apologize for being a couple of minutes late. I did have one. I'm glad you mentioned the solid waste program review coming up in I guess the next session. That is one thing that the public interest is really high in, and I have recently found myself fairly flat-footed on the orange bag program. And this is not, I'm sure, news to anyone in the public works or in the solid waste, but just explaining, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And also I would add just a lot of interest in the compost and recycling program in general. I just think the solid waste piece is real visible to people and that people get pretty passionate about it. But I've heard wide range of information on the orange bag program, including that why do you bother? It just gets landfilled. I'm sure you've heard it all.
Chair, Commissioner, thanks for the question. We get that one a lot. And so the Energy Bag program was started in response back in 18, I think it was, when China decided to no longer take basically hard to recycle plastics, 3 through 7 in particular, and then the films that you get like a grocery bag from Albertsons, for example. So we decided, we were approached by Dow and Reynolds, who were partnering on a program that they had piloted, I think, in Omaha, to try to provide some way to address the hard to recycle 3 through 7 and the films that were all going to the landfill now that China was no longer taking them. So we got into a partnership with Dow, Reynolds. We worked with, at the time, it was the owners of the recycling facility, Western Recycling, and all kind of agreed, why don't we give this a shot? And so the intent was to be the first city to really have it at scale, where you could opt in, and all you had to do was put those 3 through 7s in the energy bag and then tie it up and then just put it in your recycling, and then we'll take it from there. And where we take it from there is multiple end uses. We're always trying new things. We have companies that reach out and want to use it for wooden pallet separators. So we sent a load there one time. We had a company that reached out. I don't know if they were in New Orleans, but somebody wanted to make park benches out of them. We sent a load there, and they experiment with that. Another company called Biofusion that's building, they call them their buy blocks. They're basically taking the energy bags, using heat and pressure, and creating building blocks, kind of like CMU blocks, but made out of the compressed orange energy bag material. And then we're also sending energy bags to a cement manufacturer in Salt Lake to offset the use of coal for powering the plant, which we've run all the life cycle analysis on that, and it's much better environmental outcome. None of the energy bags are going to the landfill unless they're broken and we can't actually put them to use or send them to where they need their final end use. So that's a quick summary of where they're going. We're constantly getting contacts from other companies or folks that are interested. Hey, can we get a truckload of the energy bags we want to experiment with something we're thinking about. There's a BSU professor I forgot to mention. He is using some of the energy bags and making really cool materials, building materials out of it. He's making furniture. The ramps at the advanced water treatment pilot are made out of the material that he's producing. So there's a bunch of things we're looking at. No perfect end state solution just yet. I think in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to deal with the 3 through 7s and the films, but we do. And so part of the strategic plan moving forward is to ask the question, do we want to continue with the energy bag program and or focus on reduce and reuse and trying to get higher up in that supply chain? And so that'll be a topic that we'd like to have a discussion with the commission on. What are your perspectives on that? We can share some of the things that are happening in other parts of the country. So that's a quick summary. Any other questions, Commissioner?
No, that's really helpful. And I suspected you had heard a lot of this information. I'm just surprised how many people have come to me with, or just mentioned, I think we stopped doing it because it's just going to the landfill. And I don't think that's right.
Yeah, sure.
Commissioner Werns, thanks for the question. Yeah, and what we can do as well, that's a great topic, and you are absolutely right. Lots of public interest. We can send out some more information to the commission after this, so that you have all the information at your disposal, and then certainly if there's follow-up questions, but we can send some more detailed information about the program, the latest, any updates, kind of FAQs for you all to look over, so that you have that at your fingertips.
And I've heard similar conversations, especially about recycling and reducing and reusing in particular. The other topic that I've heard in my circles that folks have been inquiring about is as we're looking at the water renewal plan and groundwater recharge in particular. Folks have mentioned they've heard some rumblings about conversations with folks who are currently on well systems out in West Boise and that way. About potential connections or any other impacts on either their well system or their water futures.
Chair, thanks for the question. I think it's probably a good segue into the discussion. I think one of the topics, one of the topics we want to share with you and get more feedback on is the groundwater aspect of the recycled water program. That's an area of focus for tonight. So that might be a good segue into the discussion. If there are no other questions, we can maybe jump in there.
Any other questions? All right, if there are no other questions, I'll take the liberty of following up on a recommendation just made from Mr. Hickman. For our new commissioners, maybe we would go around and just offer a quick introduction of ourselves and our role, just so that we're all acquainted and operating on the same footing. I'll kick things off and then we'll maybe go around this way. I'm Crispin Gravatt. I currently chair the commission, so I'll be running the meetings whenever I can make it, and look forward to learning more about you. Feel free to reach out. I'll reach out sometime in the future to have a time to get to know the both of you and your interest on the commission as well. I'll turn it over to Commissioner Pagan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Pagan. I am new to the commission as of February, and I currently work for the Idaho Tourism Office, but I also worked for the Idaho Energy Office under the governor's office, so have a vested interest in sustainability and the work that we do here. So love to hear some more.
And my name is Abigail Morgan, and I work with a company called Agnew Beck. We're a consulting firm that works on anything from strategic planning to community engagement. We just finagle our way into fun contracts to be able to do really cool things. And I use she, they pronouns.
Hi there, I'm Jen Ellis, and I'm the vice chair of the Public Works Commission. And I have an environmental consulting firm called Resilience LLC, and I'm a chemical and environmental engineer by trade. And I think this is my 4th year on the commission. I was trying to remember. I think I'm in the 4th year. Welcome, both of you. It's really nice to see your faces. Thanks.
Okay, hi, I'm Sola Thornfelt. I'm the new student commissioner, and I am a sophomore at Boise High. Just really excited to get to know all of you and be in this experience.
Hi, I'm Jim Wentz, and I want to say welcome to the commission. I've only been on the commission myself for about 18 months. And about 3 years ago, I retired from my job at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And this was one of the things I chose in my retirement to spend time doing.
Good evening. My name is Darrell Early. I am with the Boise City Attorney's Office. I am one of the 3 attorneys that staffs the commission. We rotate myself, Ed, and Mary Grant. And so I'm bad with names. I'm always bad with names. But I've been with the City Attorney's Office for about 19 months now and have a background in environmental and natural resources law.
Royce Davis, I'm the Recycled Water Program Manager, and I'll be presenting some information today on the Recycled Water Program.
Haley Faulkner, I'm the Environmental Division Manager in Public Works, which includes the Recycled Water Program, our Water Quality Program, and our long-term planning and capital planning for water renewal.
I'm Steve Burgos, Public Works Director.
Colin Hickman, Organizational Strategy Manager with Public Works. I've had the great fortune of working with Public Works Commission really closely, helping with the reset. So new commissioners, welcome. We're very happy to have you on the commission. One other thing that I would add also is that we did set up this past year like a orientation and a welcome. And so I know we kind of missed it on the timing on this one, but that'll come around again, I think this year. And so just as a heads up, there will be more of like a formal welcome and orientation so that there's a little more time spent getting to know one another. But again, welcome to the commission.
Awesome. Thank you, folks. And let's look online. Commissioner Collette.
Hi there. I hope you can see me okay. So I'm trying to do this on my phone. I'm Kylene Collette. I think I've been on the commission about 4 years now as well, so about the same as Commissioner Ellis. And yeah, I'm the campus planner at Boise State, and welcome to the commission. It's really nice to meet you in person. Hopefully I can be there next time.
Thank you. Commissioner Lockett?
Hi, welcome, Robin Lockett. My day job is I work for the Office of the Attorney General. I oversee our general administration and budget for the office here. And I joined the commission last year. And there is a lot, so be prepared to do lots of reading, ask lots of questions, and we're so glad to have you here. So like Kylene, I look forward to seeing you at a future meeting in person. So thank you.
All right, any other folks online want to jump in and offer an intro?
Yeah, certainly. I'm Dan Stanaway. I'm with Brown & Caldwell and supporting Royce with the Recycled Water Program for all things groundwater recharge.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you, everybody, and thanks for the recommendation of a quick round of intros. And with that, I think that takes us to our second item on the agenda, which is a discussion around the Recycled Water Program. And I will turn it over to staff.
Great, thank you, Chair. We're excited to present an update on the Recycled Water Program, and we'll start with Haley Faulkner, who's going to give an overview of the Recycled Water Program, kind of how we got to today. And then Royce and Dan are going to get into the details of the groundwater recharge component. So there was a lot of information in your packet. I apologize for that. There was a fair amount of information, but we wanted to try to provide as much as possible to prep you for the kind of questions we were going to ask you tonight. And we really do want to, we'll have very intentional stops here throughout the presentation to really start having a dialogue on kind of hearing your perspective on certain questions that we have. We really do want your feedback. So we're going to be very intentional about that. And with that, I will turn it over to Haley.
Okay, sit. Or should I stand?
Maybe stand, I think.
Royce told me to stand. I was like, I'll sit. No, I guess I'll sit. Okay. There we go. How's that? Little bit, or actually there's an additional item to this agenda. I'm going to provide a little bit of the precursor to the Recycled Water Program, and then Royce will share some background, a bit of a progress report, or maybe I'm doing the background, I don't know. And then really focus our discussion today around groundwater recharge, particularly in this geochemistry and water quality, which is why we have Dan with us. Recognizing fully that we are diving into some details, but they're really important details to get your all's input, feedback, questions, clarifications to help shape kind of the next phase of the work that we're doing. But before we jump into that, especially with some new commissioners, I wanted to anchor why we are here with the Recycled Water Program and groundwater recharge, with the utility planning effort that occurred over the course of about 5 years, from 2015 until 2020, really anchored in hearing from the community about what community expectations were around how we use our water. So recognizing that we have this product that we treat to a high level and currently discharge into the Boise River, and we ask the question, what else could we do with that? Covered a wide range of possibilities, but what we got out of that was the recommendation from the public that all new capacity that the city builds in our system to account for growth and kind of changing conditions will shift us to recycled water. So that's what the pie chart here shows, is we're going to continue to treat at our existing facilities and discharge to the Boise River. That's the blue part of the pie. The orange is that we're going to add some additional treatment or some additional projects to really enhance the river. We consistently hear how important it is that we invest in the Boise River. But that anything new that we add to the system will be recycled water. And what's showing here is industrial reuse and groundwater recharge. And so by that, it's collecting water from industry, treating that through the advanced water treatment process. And then once we have a purified water, either putting that in the ground or returning it to industry. So that's really the foundation of this work. And we talk about it so much now that we're a few years into the program that I thought it might be nice to connect back to where we had been a few years ago and the plan that really set the direction for this, which I basically just said here. So the program itself, as the outcome of our utility plan, it does redefine the future of where we're headed. It allows us to have conversations like this, which are very different than say 5 or 10 years ago, where talking about recycled water was in its infancy for us. And now we're talking about it as sort of the norm and the expectation moving forward. And we're asking much more specific questions about how we can do that in a way that is protective of the environment and public health, but does it in a way that keeps this water local and provides a benefit to the community. Man, it's like I know what slides are coming next. The real drivers for this, growth, certainly the ability for us to add capacity to our system, not just in treatment capacity, but also where the water goes. So by diversifying where the water goes between industry, groundwater recharge, and into the river, we do allow some flexibility within our system. Certainly, you see the climate action roadmap on there as we face increasingly challenging climate drivers. Having a local water supply that is a drought-proof water supply is something that'll be really important to our community. And then it's really in response to what we've heard from the citizens of Boise, is that we should be doing recycled water and finding ways to keep this water local. And so in cartoon form, what we are talking about is where we have industrial source water or commercial source water separate from the sanitary waste, like from homes and businesses. So really a specific source of water, putting it through a recycled water facility. Certainly some of you have been out to the pilot and seen kind of the small scale version of what that could be. And then that water either going to groundwater recharge, which is what we'll spend much of our time today talking about, going to industrial reuse, which could be a different industry or business. It could be back to a business that sends us their water. So that could be more of a loop, but keeping these options open and ensuring that we're producing a water quality that will meet the needs of these various uses. Oh, that doesn't zoom in very nicely, but I think what we're able to do here in this addition of capacity to our system is now we've got a piece of property that we've closed on recently for the location of the next facility. So where the actual treatment facility, the recycled water facility, will be built, just to anchor I don't know, does this have a, oh, it's not going to work on there. To anchor what we're seeing on the map here, running vertically on the right side, you can see the interstate, and there's a marker for Micron. So Micron Technologies is up there in the right. As we cross the interstate, there's the industrial development area there in the urban renewal district. And so, things you might see from the interstate, the Winco distribution center, there's an Amazon sortation center out there. So this is a piece of property that's adjacently located to existing zoned industrial area, close to a primary source of water for this recycled water facility in Micron, and an area that's we know has a water demand or a water need, both groundwater and from the industry. So excited to have kind of one piece of this project anchored now to a location. Undetermined if this would be the site for the groundwater recharge. A lot of what Royce and Dan will talk about today will determine kind of what's the necessary conditions that are required for groundwater recharge. So it is possible that this site is both the treatment and the groundwater recharge, but it's also possible that those are separate sites as well. So with that, I think I'll hand it over to Royce.
Any questions for Haley on the background, bigger picture? Okay. All right, Royce.
Okay. Excited to be here today. It feels like we've spent a lot of time preparing for this meeting since we didn't have the last one. So excited to finally get to meet you and present on the recycled water program. So just to start out, just kind of update the advanced water treatment pilot. A lot of you have been out there. We're in phase 2 configuration now, which has been running well. Still sampling twice a week. We're up to about 35,000 samples tested and almost 3.5 to 4 million gallons of water treated through the pilot to date. It would highlight too the picture on the left. That's one of the main new additions to phase 2 configuration is a moving bed bioreactor pilot, which the little plastic discs contain microbiology or bacteria that as the water comes in, the bacteria feed off of acetone, isopropyl alcohol, ammonia, and other constituents. So we're basically feeding the little bugs on the little discs that remove the acetone. So it's kind of a fun little addition to the pilot. And I think intern wise, we've, what, 6, 7, I think we'll have our 8th intern this summer. So it's been nice. We just interviewed. It was a very competitive process that we were surprised how many people want to come work at the pilot, which is, I guess, not to be surprised. But some of the highlights, we continue to meet with Idaho Department of Environmental Quality and Idaho Department of Water Resources on a bi-monthly basis. So every other month we meet and discuss the recycled water permit and or the underground injection control permit that we'll have to apply for at a future date. So working closely with those 2 departments. We had an annexation meeting with the neighbors as we annexed the new property, and we're able to meet some of the neighbors in the area, which was great. We're also working on some further focus groups and things that will start this summer with the neighbors in the community. And then also we attended the National Water Reuse Conference in Denver in in March. And we're able to present on the recycled water program there that was very well accepted. Just a 3-month look ahead. We will continue to run the pilot. We finish up our intense sampling in May, and then we'll continue to just operate the pilot for community engagement and stakeholder outreach through the summer. We've started engineering design for the recycled water facility and the pipeline to get the water from Micron to the new recycled water facility site. We have about 7 different business case evaluations that we're currently working on. Most of them all at one time, which are big decisions like what treatment technology we'll have at the recycled water facility. What is the source water quality envelope that'll come into the facility? A lot of big decisions that we'll make between now and the next 9 months with those business case evaluation. And then all to meet the goal of producing purified water by 2029. So we make a lot of decisions in the next few months that really set us up to meet that goal. Okay, any questions on our recent progress or next steps?
Questions so far from the commission? Commissioner Ellis.
Yeah, I had a question at the reuse water conference you talked about in March. You said we were very well accepted. I wondered to what capacity you were presenting our status and what we're up to. So were we kind of on the forefront, or were there other comparable entities and cities that we're talking to?
So Abby and Deanne presented on the community outreach and the pilot terminology. Which when I say it went well in the sense that there was standing room only in the room. A lot of really good questions, and it was really well received. I had different communities after the presentation reaching back out to us, talk about how we did some of the community outreach events and things like that. So it went really well. But I would say, as far as the community engagement piece goes, we were on the forefront, or, with those in California and other places that put a lot of effort into it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Chair, if I could, I think in addition, kind of zooming out from the community engagement, we're in a unique spot as a city that's not in the immediate crisis mode. So you see a lot of advanced recycled water programs responding to water shortages that are right in front of them. There's sort of a new cohort of utilities that are in this planning phase where it's like we see the potential, or there's a different driver outside of the right in front of you water shortage. And I think that is an area that makes the city unique. There's a few other folks that are in a similar position, but it's not that same driver it gives us this sort of conversation. It allows for some of the questions and kind of really alignment with the community. And so that I do think sets us apart.
Thank you. I've got Commissioner Lockett online.
Hi, thank you. I had a question unrelated to outreach, but because it was brought up, I'll maybe ask 2 questions if I may. My first is, I heard that there was an Ada County Board of Commissioners water summit today for the Treasure Valley area. Are they part of the partnerships that you're continuing to make? Did we have someone in attendance at the Water Summit?
Commissioner Lockett actually presented to that about 2 hours ago.
Way to go.
Yeah,
Excuse
so
me,
yeah,
Mr. Chair.
I'm all over that one. And we did present and be a part of that group. The city of Boise is one of the sponsors, so. And were there additional questions?
Follow up, are you finding, to the extent that you want to go on the record to say, are you finding that it's a successful partnership and that we have some goals that are similar across the valley with these folks?
I don't know if I can speak broadly to that. It's my first interaction with the group, but.
Yeah, I can jump in, Chair. Yeah, absolutely. It's been within the valley, just the transparency of the work. Nampa is trying to start their reuse program. I think they're actually close to producing, if not have already produced their first drop of recycled water. Meridian had a program for years that they in part suspended because they didn't have as big a driver as maybe in previous years. But I think they have the option of potentially getting that back up and running. So there's a lot of conversation in the valley about broad water issues, and then specifically recycled water. So it's been encouraging, and a lot of support out there in the community across the valley for these types of solutions. So.
Thank you. I think that's great. That's really great news. My question originally too was PFAS. Is that how we say it? PFAS, those chemicals. We talked about that some at our last meeting, and maybe it's not something we need to address now, but I wanted to just continue to hear that through these discussions, that is a high priority, that we're looking at minimum standards and beyond, right? I'd like us to exceed other standards and just keep our water so clean. And it's something obviously that everybody wants, but I wanted to continue to keep that at the forefront of our discussions, or have you address it now through an update on that. Either way is great. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner, I think the update I can give you is that we continue to sample for PFAS. So at every 6 different locations twice a week. So we're continuing to gather a lot of PFAS data, and we could definitely in the next meeting share more of that data too. But the reverse osmosis does a good job of removing the 40 PFAS compounds that we're currently sampling for. But it is on the forefront. I think recently the drinking water standards came out from EPA a few weeks ago. So that is definitely something that we're paying attention to.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wertz?
Thank you, Chair. Royce, I'm curious about the collaboration with IDWR and DEQ, and whether or not since it's such an innovative or not done before approach, the recycled water approach you're doing, have you got them meeting together with the city? So you're not meeting separately, but together and talking about the challenges and getting their feedback?
Yeah, so Commissioner Wentz, we meet bi-monthly with IDEQ and IDWR, so it's a joint meeting. We go down to the regional office and meet. And that's what's interesting with the recycled water permit, and it's like a case-by-case basis. So there's land application rules, there's wastewater rules, but the state of Idaho doesn't really have recycled water rules or reuse. It's kind of, not that it's an open book, but it's like a case-by-case basis. So that's where we meet and discuss. We give updates on the program and are kind of working through how we would provide all the necessary information for the permits that we would apply for in the future. So.
Go ahead. Just one follow-up. Is there any discussion of a negotiated rulemaking of sorts by one or both of the agencies to try to clarify some of the requirements in support of this kind of a program? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't, Chair, Commissioner Warren, no discussions that I know of that. There are ongoing rulemaking updates on things like the UIC, the underground injection control rules, which oversee the ability to inject water into the ground through DWR. So that's was supposed to be updated last year, has been tabled and is ongoing. We expect kind of an initial update this month, but I don't think we've seen that yet, but nothing that would, nothing so far that would pave the way differently for this. We've got kind of the two agency approach right now for how the regulations are set up, but there's nothing in the rules either that disallow what we're doing. I think that's the case by case basis that Roy spoke of. It does allow us to move forward with this.
Commissioner Pagan.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned that there's some piping going in for Micron. Is that correct? Is the idea that Micron would be connected to this facility, and would you be in line with their expansion that they're planning out there?
Yeah, so Commissioner Pagan, there's, we are in the early stages of thinking through where the pipes would go. Very early though, so we will be working with Micron on their different outfalls and how we would reroute the pipes, or how the pipes would go, which direction, whether it's on the north or the south facility, those kind of things. So very early, but yes, we'll be working with Micron on where the pipes go.
And for clarity, Chair, Commissioner, this is not related to the expansion. So this is only their research facility. Their current facility that they discharge to us would be the water that we would pick up and move to a different facility. It's possible that there's some construction alignment as they're having to do on-site construction related to their expansion, that our pipeline needs may align with that, but they wouldn't be, they're still pretty separated, and they're not one and the same, I guess. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions so far from the commission? All right. I'm also sort of curious along the lines of Commissioner Wern's questioning if in the future it would be helpful or detrimental at the point that we're at to continue conversations about some more statewide policy, especially as we're building out some maybe regional planning efforts with our counties and other municipalities. No need to answer right now, but just would be interested in receiving that update as we do move along. All right, and back to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the groundwater recharge engagement introduction. Again, from the February meeting, we made the recording and sent that out. We also sent out the packets of the information that had a lot of detailed information about groundwater recharge, which we call Groundwater Recharge 101. In today's conversation, will be over geochemistry and water quality, about purified water conditioning and some of the well monitoring network. And then in August, we'll get into the modeling and site methods. So background water quality, we've been doing a lot of sampling and a lot of data accumulation on the background water quality too. So we'll be able to present that in August as well. Okay. So again, just manage groundwater recharge. What we're talking about here is whether it's, there's natural groundwater infiltration through the river or canals, rain, snow, different things in the valley. What we're talking about is a injection well or infiltration, one of those two methods to take the purified water and put it into the ground water. That's what we're talking about. Again, our goal is to increase groundwater quantity and maintain or enhance groundwater quality. And we'll be talking about how we're going to do that today. So groundwater recharge, how will it benefit the Boise community? One, increases the local water supply against climate change and drought. So it's basically, I like to think of it as a new water supply or a new source of water that we can store in the ground. Two, it maximizes investments for different multiple benefits, whether it's growth, if it's economic development, those types of things. And three, provides a consistent year-round location of the storage of the purified water. So those are the three primary benefits. Okay, key program decisions that we'll have to make is where will we recharge the groundwater? It's either site A or site B. Got it down to two. What water quality will we achieve? There are some Water quality is an interesting one based on which advanced treatment technologies the water goes through, whether it goes through all 6 or 4 of the 6. There's some, and then also the water conditioning on the back end. You have some opportunities to, not that it's designer water, but there are some technologies available to increase water quality. And then how will we recharge the groundwater? So if it's infiltration or injection. Okay.
Commission members, let me explain the switcheroo with Royce and I here. So kind of with the reset, we decided we wanted to highlight the importance of a discussion amongst commission members with staff. And so I'll be facilitating the dialogue today. Royce and I will kind of be tag teaming with him presenting, but me more facilitating the conversation, and really for a couple of reasons. Primarily so that Royce can really sit and listen as the program manager. It's really important that he listens actively to the feedback, the input that you all have, is part of the discussion and dialogue, and can answer any questions. And that allows me to really focus on the conversation. So that's the first one. And really it goes back to when we talked, and for the new commission members, when we did the commission reset, it was, as Steve mentioned, a lot less of us talking at you and a lot more of listening and hearing the commission talk through and provide guidance on a lot of these major components. The other thing that I did want to highlight is that your feedback and input is really important to this program and to all the topics. And so the cycle that we were getting into, and I know that it was disrupted a little bit with this last one, but we'll get back into that, is that every meeting that we go to going forward, we'll come back to you all and say, here's how your input has helped shape the program since we last talked to you. So just know that this is not just a conversation for the sake of it, that Royce and the program team really take to heart and incorporate what you all say here into the program and into the development of that. And we'll get back into that habit of bringing that back and showing how the input, what we discuss here today, has really helped shape the program. So I think that's important to note as well. And then lastly, before I kick off the conversation, I did want to introduce Melissa Stoner. Melissa is over there. And Melissa is the communications manager for Public Works. And she is going to start leading the facilitations after this meeting. So she's just kind of observing today. And she'll be taking over. So I just wanted to introduce her because you'll be seeing a lot more of Melissa in the future. So she'll do fantastic. So with that being said, I know commissioners had no shortage of information to look over and read through. So we wanted to start really high level and just listen to commissioners on what sparked your curiosity, what jumped out at you from the groundwater recharge recording that this group sent out. Just what jumped out to you.
All right, I'll open it up for discussion. Feel free to jump in at your leisure.
Chair. I wanted to thank the Public Works Department for doing such a great job for sending out those materials. And despite the missed meeting in February, sending out the recording was very much appreciated. It was really, really helpful to help me sink my teeth into this topic. All that said, I think the thing that was most exciting to see when looking at like the groundwater recharge 101 was seeing and getting teed up for the geochemistry component. So that flew really beautifully in my mind. And so then learning about the elements in our agenda packet was really, really helpful. And I'm excited to talk more about that today.
Great. Thank you. Any other initial thoughts, Commission? I thought that was a pretty concise video to put in a whole 101. All right. Next question, maybe?
Okay. So also what we thought would be helpful was just sending out almost like a glossary, because I know, speaking personally, there are a lot of terms in the world of public works, lots of acronyms, lots of things. So we thought it would be helpful to just put in some of the terminology and then the background. So I think oftentimes we can just jump from one thing to the next and keep going. So this question really reflects us just wanting to take a second with commission. And is there any terminology that was included or any of the background before we start jumping into, as Commissioner Morgan discuss some of the more in detail items? Just wanted to take a second and make sure that we covered all the bases. And if there was any confusion or any questions around the terminology or background, taking the time to discuss that more today.
Any terminology or background questions, commissioners? All right, I think if we do, we have the glossary, but Commissioner Wertz.
I mean, Chair, thank you. I think it's really important to put it down. I mean, I have some familiarity, but I think that I still like referring to it for some, just to have it there. And it kind of also gets back to, Royce starring in the video. It's a one-way street, though. You know what I mean? So it really was a productive way to help us, but there wasn't a way to sort of say, what's that acronym mean, or what does that mean? And I didn't think there were really that many difficulties with it, but I think it's the right thing to do to keep that kind of terminology and definitional stuff kind of always at hand, or at least in the materials, because this is only going to get more technical as we go, and we're not all geologists here.
Chair, just to follow up on Commissioner Ward's comments, like that's our biggest challenge, is trying to get this communicated in a way that is accessible to the public, because it gets so technical so quickly. You're going to see this today when Dan and Royce present on some of the geochemistry. So any feedback you have on, better ways to communicate, or areas where it's like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but and I only understand what you're saying because I read the packet. Like, you're going to lose people here. Give us that feedback, please.
And Chair, Commissioner Warrens, thanks for that. Yeah, agreed with what Steve said. I also think it'll be helpful for additional topics when, let's say, we bring the solid waste strategic plan back in front, that glossary or term of terminology and background. So that's great feedback. Appreciate that.
Yeah, might need to work with you and Ms. Stoner on our own little Dino DNA video.
All right, Chair, Commission members, we also included in the materials just kind of the plan for going forward. I touched on it briefly here, but before we get into some more of the deeper discussion on groundwater recharge and items that Royce will be covering, is there any questions just on the game plan for engaging Public Works Commission on recharge over the next several sessions? I think we laid out kind of, Royce touched on it briefly, just the steps in front of us, how we're going to proceed. But we just wanted to make sure before we went any deeper that there weren't any questions on how Commission would be engaged, what that would look like.
Any questions about the path before us? Nope, looks like there are no obstacles in the way so far.
Okay. So as I think Royce mentioned, and we have Abby, who was at the conference that Royce mentioned in Denver, our community engagement team has done a really nice job of a lot of the outreach that they've done on obviously a challenging topic. And so of all the information that we sent out, we're just curious what stood out to you. Are there ways that we can improve the public engagement around groundwater recharge, make it more tangible to the community that you all represent, folks that you talk to, community members? I think that's something that's really important to the program team, is making it engaging, connecting with the community at every level, and taking that feedback in. And so we'd like to open it up to the commission. That are there things that you read, that you learned, that we could do differently? Are there things that we could improve that would make the work better connected to the community?
I'll kick things off and just say that the folks who I run with, I think passing information through either in person or through some concise material to neighborhood associations is a good way to engage, because when they work pretty well. And so that gets a good set of information out to a good group of people who then they're tuned in. So they're going to learn more and share more and have these kinds of conversations. And then plugging in with more educational programs, our schools and summer programs, nonprofits to, start young, that Dino DNA video level, to start conversations about, water cycle, build on that. What does the groundwater cycle look like? And, when you get kids excited about something, they never stop talking about it. So that's a good way to plant some brainworms too. And then I would I'm eager to see the next phase of the watershed and build on some of the programming that I think has been pretty successful in the past through their efforts.
Great. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and I'll open up for more ideas from the commission. Commissioner Morgan?
Chair, I forget if part of the tour for the pilot also included some segment of what the groundwater recharge could look like. Since it's been about 6 months, I'm having a hard time remembering if that was included on the tour.
Chair Morgan, it's usually included in the beginning or the end of the tour, so we usually take a few minutes to talk about it. But yeah.
Great. There was no comment, just like seeing if that was included in the tour, since I think that's an essential component to close the loop of like what the purpose of the pilot is.
Yeah. I'd also say that I wouldn't say we've necessarily hit it 100% out of the park as far as communicating and really helping people understand what we're doing. It's been difficult. I'll say it's been difficult to try to communicate that.
Thanks.
Commissioner Wirtz?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure I have a well-formulated thought here, but I think it comes down to the policy or the fact that the reused water, recycled water has a couple of different uses, and that at least targeted right now. And we've had that policy was the higher and I forget the term, highest and best use policy. Yeah. And I'm not suggesting we drop that out per se, but I do think that I would anticipate some confusion about, wait a minute, are we doing this for reusing the water for industry and for all those benefits, which you can articulate, or are we doing this to recharge groundwater? And which one is more important in that higher? And I think having more clarity on that in the discussion and materials is going to help alleviate some confusion. I don't know if that was clear.
Chair, can I follow up with a question? Commissioner Warren, so on that front, you're kind of getting at the just the lack of clarity around, like, we can speak to it, but if somebody we just ran into on the street and we try to describe what we were doing, it's probably going to be pretty confusing to figure out, okay, well, so are you giving it back to industry? Are you selling it back? Are you putting it in the aquifer? What is the highest priority? So in effect, take that highest and best use policy and kind of make it a little more approachable. Would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, here's a hypothetical question. So if you were able to take all of the recycled water and use it back in the industrial sector, would you? And then not need groundwater recharge? I think the answer is yes. But since that's not feasible, given the industrial basically the processes and the need to always be able to use that water, then the groundwater recharge that sounds like a secondary use. But I think having that a little more polished would maybe alleviate some confusion down the road.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Chair, Commissioner, if I could, or Commission, it's like a game show, like who's got their button. I think also though, and because I would ask you all at the risk of our time check, but like, how would you answer that? That's part of this. If you had a strong opinion one way or the other on that, because I think the other way that we can and have talked about it is, well, maybe there's a minimum amount that always goes in the groundwater, because that truly is bolstering our groundwater supply, which has this connection to the broader community benefit. Certainly if we're offsetting water that would otherwise be drinking water that an industry would use for a process. There's a benefit there as well in the more closed loop process. But I think, there's a reason both of those are at the top. Certainly groundwater recharge becomes a landing spot for when there isn't an industrial use. But I think the question could come back to you all too, like what stands out in that? And maybe that comes up through the course of our groundwater recharge conversation on how important is that component of this. Certainly we know that we need it as a place when there isn't an industrial demand, but does it have a higher weighting too, potentially because of the community benefit?
Yeah, I would note just earlier in this conversation, when I heard a glint of passion and excitement in talking about the participation in the water reuse conference and the excitement around a place like Boise doing it, where we are not we're not responding to crisis, we are preventing crisis. And so it's not necessarily the best way to lead, but there are communities who are in crisis, who are struggling and scrimping and scrounging to get everything that they can to address their crisis. And because we are ahead of the curve, because we're really involved in this work, we're excited to get ahead of the curve, get ahead of the game, and really create a system that keeps us from getting to crisis, keeps us healthy and vibrant, and keeps a water supply around that we can use for generations to come without needing to spend the extra money on crisis intervention. So I think that's probably the intersection, the Venn diagram between the nerdy excitement and some of the nitty gritty of it all, and the what excites the public about thinking about something that they haven't really thought about before. Commissioner Pagan?
Chair, kind of along those lines, I was thinking of groups that potentially we could reach out to and provide information. And I know on Instagram and Facebook there are Boise Float groups who obviously really care about the Boise River, and it might be a great place to maybe partner with those groups and provide some just high-level information about here's what we're trying to do to keep the Boise River the Boise River. I know that I follow those groups primarily because we love the river and we want to be on the river. And so I know that they would probably be a great community to advocate for what you're doing.
Chair, Commissioner Pagan, thank you. Appreciate that.
Commissioner Ellis?
Chair, along those lines, I was going to mention it, but now I feel like this is a good merge of the two is when you're thinking about community outreach and getting the word out beyond the groups that are the schools and the other groups you mentioned, it's kind of along the lines of like the Curbit and the livability groups. And perhaps you've already thought of that, but it's kind of like who are the excited people that are using the river and would be good advocates. And so this idea that training them, and I mean, I'm thinking like house parties during elections. And I mean, there are some people who joined Curbit who are pretty excited about recycling. I was one of them who would be more than happy to have a house party. And I really think that it goes along the lines with the neighborhood community meetings, but even the house parties. I mean, it could be this cool thing where you get invited to a house party to help communicate. Although you'd have to have really good pupils, right, to spread the word and get the right information. Oh, and I was going to add one more thing before I forget, is when I've tried to explain this to relatives out of town, what we're doing, the first question we get to when I'm done talking is what happens to the water that goes in, that gets recharged into the groundwater. That's the first thing they want to know. I'm like, well, it depends, and it might go here. We're not sure, but that's the first thing they want to know. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Chair, Commissioner Ellis, yeah, that's
Keep seeing
helpful.
that.
That's, yeah. And I think today's conversation will get into that a lot more, but that's helpful input to share.
Commissioner Lockett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we had a meeting last year, we brainstormed a list of people we thought it would be important for touring and being engaged. Do we still have that list? And are we just adding to that list? Because obviously it all intersects. And so I feel like we've done this before.
Yes, Commissioner Lockett, we still have the list and we keep adding to the list and try to engage everyone as much as we can. So.
That's great. Is that something you could shoot us out in an email or include in our minutes for our next meeting, please? Then we can continue to brainstorm because these are all super duper ideas.
Chair, Commissioner, absolutely. Yes. Thank you. We will include that and send that out after the meeting. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't want to take up too much time if it's not going to be super helpful, but I do have just one more note just on the level of messaging. And this is something that's super hard for a lot of people who are doing the work day to day, but take credit for what you've already done and brag about yourselves and what you've already done. And that can look at like anything from all sorts of campaigns or signs along the river for floaters or whatever else, just to like, oh, I didn't know that this is because there are people doing this kind of work, and oh, now I want to learn more.
That's great. Chair, appreciate that. We're not good at that. And part of that is, you know, these discussions, and Commissioner Ellis, you were talking about advocates. We always are careful to walk a fine line between providing information that allow you then to talk to your neighbors that provide facts and, you know, the sound science that we're trying to pursue at the pilot, and then advocating too much so that it's almost becoming like a pitch. And we don't want that. We're always conscious of like, we're just trying to give information to folks from which they can provide feedback and potentially influence decision making that we have, because we do want to hear those perspectives. So it's always a fine line that we try to walk. And so I just want to make that comment.
Sounds like a fine line. I think if there's nothing else quick, then back to you.
Okay. And actually, not to Chair Commissioner Thornfelt, not to put you on the spot, I just wanted to open it up to you. If you saw anything that sparked your curiosity, feel free to say no, but I welcome you in the conversation. If again, we're glad to have you on the commission.
Well, I'm not a part of the green team at my school. I'm kind of adjacent to it, but I know a lot of them are really passionate about our city and our river. So I think definitely reaching out to those kind of clubs and, you know, organizations in schools would be really important and a good kind of segue into that.
Great. Chair, Commissioner, thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. And one last, Chair Commissioner Lockett, just on your point, we'll definitely send out that list, but I think another important piece is that the engagement will continue to evolve. So, you know, even that we'll continue to bring this back in front of commission. So you all's continued engagement around who we're talking to, how we're talking to them, in what manner, what we're sharing, best way, that'll continue to evolve and as this team moves forward in the program. So just wanted to bring that back around, that we really find it incredibly important and lean on you all as far as this program goes forward, how we can best communicate and engage with the public on that. So with that, I will turn it back over to Royce.
Chair, Commissioners, thank you for the feedback and comments. I'm not a note taker and I'm taking notes, so that's good. I'll get into the first few slides, and then I'll turn it over to Dan Stanaway from Brown and Caldwell to get more into the details of the geochemistry and water quality. Brown and Caldwell is our engineering consultant for the recycled water program and project. So just to simplify things a little bit, our goal of this is to increase groundwater quantity and maintain or enhance the groundwater quality. So that's, again, just to simplify what we're trying to do here and lay out for everybody, that is the goal. Some water quality decisions that we'll have to make. One is how will the purified water interact with water already in the ground? So how does the purified water from the pilot that comes out of the pilot, how does it interact directly with the groundwater in the ground? Soils and minerals, how will the purified water that comes out of the pilot or the recycled water facility, how does that, when we inject it or infiltrate it, how does it interact with the soils and minerals already in the ground? So if it's sand, if it's coarse gravel, if it's river rock that's 300 feet below the ground, if it's basalt, how does that interact with the water? And then groundwater quality, how will the purified water be conditioned to maintain or enhance the groundwater quality? So what are we going to do with the water to make sure that we meet those goals of improving groundwater quality? So just to lay it out in pictures, used water from industry, which will flow to the recycled water facility, which has the selected advanced water treatment technologies in there, the ultrafiltration and reverse osmosis and ultraviolet advanced oxidation peroxide, or whatever we decide we need to put in there. Can't even say that word. And then we'll have the purified water conditioning. So once the water comes out of the facility, what do we do to condition the water so that when we inject it or it infiltrates, that we improve the groundwater quality and quantity? So some questions that as we go through this to think about is, what is geochemistry and how does it relate to the managed groundwater recharge? What is conditioning of purified water and how is it used to protect groundwater quality? What work is the city doing to evaluate geochemical reactions? And how will this information support the treatment design of the future recycled water facility? And how will the city monitor and track the recharged water after it is put in the ground? So just some key questions that you can kind of, as Dan goes through this part, you can hopefully have an answer or an understanding of those questions. Okay. Yeah.
For clarity, these are the questions that we are answering as the program.
Yes.
And then we'll provide some information to show the commission how we'll be answering those, but the questions we will ask you all today are different from these questions.
Right. Okay. Not a pop quiz.
No. We're going to see who did the homework and who did not. Who listened to the recording and who did not. Just kidding. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to turn it again away. So Dan Stanaway, I believe, I forget Dan's official title, hydrologist with Brown and Caldwell, our engineering consultant. That Dan is really leading up the groundwater recharge effort so far. And turning it over to you, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I appreciate the introduction and appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to the chair and commission members here. So I am involved and deeply involved with all of the aspects of groundwater recharge here. And one of the critical things that we're understanding or starting to understand is what is geochemistry and how does it interact with the overall recycled water program and groundwater recharge. And the first question is, essentially is like, why does groundwater recharge, or what is geochemistry? How does it interact with and relate to groundwater and groundwater recharge? And the easiest answer to that, the most straightforward answer, is that geochemistry, geochemical interactions can affect water quality. And with the objective of the recycled water program to maintain or enhance water quality, understanding what potential water chemistry changes resulting from geochemical interactions is critically important. So before we take a look at our engineered system with the managed recharge, and we just think about recharge in a natural environment, you essentially start with the precipitation coming into the system, rain or snow, and then that water moving through the ground and arriving at the water table in the groundwater. And now the water quality of that groundwater, or the water chemistry of that groundwater, and the water chemistry of that precipitation is different And the reason that it's different is because as water moves through the subsurface, it has these geochemical interactions with the clays and the sands, the silts, and the rocks that affect or that change that water quality. And these changes, when we talk about changes in water quality, I think a lot of folks, or a lot of times the default is that it can go towards the detrimental side, and that can happen. But these interactions can also be a positive end. So it really is, how do you manage these geochemical interactions to see the results that you want to see? And that question right there is really where we're engaged at right now with the program. Just to give it an example here, in the lower valley, not up where we're targeting, but there's data, BSU's done a bunch of research that shows that recharge because of irrigation waters, as that irrigation water returns to the drains and it infiltrates into the shallower aquifer, that it does change that water chemistry. And in this instance, it's a detriment because it picks up elevated levels of arsenic and uranium. And so knowing that's not assuming and not inferring that that's going to be a situation that we have, but we do know that these mechanisms exist that can change our water quality. And that's really where we're trying to get to the heart of the matter here. So the opportunity that we have here in our managed system and our engineered system is that we can spend resource and time and care in thinking about what potentially could occur naturally with the geochemistry side of things. And the real opportunity that we have is that we can tailor or we can generate that purified water to a state that when we put it into the ground, it's going to be as non-reactive as possible. So we can head off any geochemical reaction prior to it mobilizing anything that's within that soil and aquifer matrix. The way that we do this is through understanding what our existing groundwater quality is, and we're running the sampling program currently. Knowing what's in the water now and being able to match our purified water as closely as possible to that chemistry is going to go a long ways in introducing this water to make it just look a little bit more like the environment that it's coming into. There's a couple of things that we can, couple of knobs, couple of tweaks or areas that we can focus on when we're thinking about how are we going to generate purified water from the recycled water facility to be this as non-reactive as possible. And these are the pH and the alkalinity of the water, which constituents are in the water, and then what's the concentration of constituents. And when constituents here mean the elements, the chemistry of that water. So to talk first about pH and alkalinity, we see here with the figure the pH scale. As we go to either ends of that scale, that water becomes more and more reactive. What we know right now is that water coming out of the pilot is about a 4.5 to 5.5 pH. Our native groundwater sits at 7.7 to 7.8. And so just from the get-go, we know that we have to employ processes that are listed out here on the right-hand side of the slide that's going to raise that pH into that circumneutral, into that pH in the high sevens, so that there's not a change in that water chemistry that can then elicit or can bring out elements from the soils. The other side of the same coin is alkalinity. And alkalinity is essentially what we were trying to do with alkalinity is buffer that water, buffer the water's ability to withstand any changes in pH. So that if there is some sort of reaction that's occurring in the subsurface that would otherwise change or lower that pH, the alkalinity buffer would ensure, as much as you can ensure, that water is going to remain stable in the pH range that we want to see. So then we move into, from the pH and the alkalinity side, we move into what's in the water. And a couple of pictures here on the right-hand side, just to give us some common everyday examples of what we're going to be talking about. You know, if you go to grandma's house and you get a pot of coffee, you get a cup of coffee from her, at least for me, it's not good. I don't like that coffee. It's way too weak. Conversely, if grandma comes to my house, she thinks my coffee tastes like mud. And so what we're trying to do with this water is avoid both of these extremes. If the purified water is too dilute, then it can pick up a whole bunch of elements from the soil matrix, soil and aquifer matrix. Some of those could be bad. If that water is too concentrated with whatever element you want to think of, namely a couple, then those elements can drop out and they can either impair groundwater quality from the injection. We're not doing that. The other thing that can happen is from the operational side is the things, if you have analytes dropping out of that water, they can clog wells, it can clog the aquifer pore space, and so it impairs water movement. So getting that water dilution just right is really important, so that you don't have either end of the spectrum of either that water picking up too much stuff or dropping too much stuff out. And related to related to that is water hardness. And if you sometimes you go out to the country and you drink water from a well and it tastes like iron. So you get a water softener and you essentially change what's in that water so that it's more palatable to us. But then also, depending on what's in that water, it can also lead to these mineral buildup, and that can also lead to inefficiencies or reduced efficiency with your recharge operation. So the Recycled Water Program is engaging in a pretty extensive geochemical program. And this study goes from the field work component of the study all the way through to design of the water treatment system. And through this flow chart that you see here. So to start with, we're collecting samples from drilling, and we can utilize those samples to understand what are we seeing, what's in the subsurface. So this slide, you know, we're starting over here in the upper right. We've got our drill rig out. In the left-hand panel, these are actual drill cuttings, samples of the drill cuttings that are collected every 5 feet as we go down through the earth to our total depth of the well. And by analyzing these visually and within the lab, we're able to understand what minerals are on there and therefore what potential interactions could occur. So in this slide, we have a picture on the upper right here. This is a 10-time magnification and a 30-time magnification. These are both visual evaluations that occur in the field with a microscope. And our geochemists are then able to look at these pictures and identify the various mineral phases that are present. That gets taken a step further in labs where the laboratory can evaluate what they're seeing and either confirm what we see, or if there's a mineral phase that's hard to detect because it's in low quantities or whatnot, then the laboratory procedures can identify that. What we're finding is really good news. We're finding that most of the mineral makeup in our sands that would be our where we'd be looking to recharge is feldspar and quartz. That's really good news because these are by and large non-reactive minerals. Contrast that with if we were to find pyrite, which we're not, and this is also very good news. If we had a mineral such as pyrite that is very reactive with air and water, the combination of air, water, and pyrite generates acid. It can leach arsenic from the pyrite mineral and other minerals. So that we don't have this is really beneficial to our program and really is seemingly good for our water quality evaluations and water quality effects. So then from the lab studies, from the field studies, we go into the lab. And at this point in time, we're using the samples that are collected from the drill cuttings and water from the water treatment plant that's at 3 different chemistries. And so we talked a little bit about conditioning. And so the water is being conditioned at different levels. So we get an understanding of how these different water chemistries will interact with our soils, with our soil samples there. And the laboratory that we're using is in Steamboat Springs. It's ACZ. They're a geochemical laboratory. They specialize in the type of studies we're doing. We're not going to go into these pictures at all, just to show a typical example of what a lab setup is, and then what our soil samples here in the bottom left panel. We sent those out. We're sending our water out here as early as next week, and we're going to start running these laboratory tests to see what comes off our soil samples based on different water qualities. So then the third step in the study is geochemical modeling. And the model takes in the information, the mineralogy information from the field work and the lab work for that. It takes in what we find from our leaching studies, or these, the laboratory tests we were just talking about with purified water. And we set up a geochemical model so that we can start to tweak, refine, to optimize that purified water quality. And then that circles up and endpoints to the design of the recycled water facility. And all for the goal here of increasing Boise's water supply while protecting and improving the groundwater quality. So just to reiterate from what Royce was saying on his side and doing some of the work with what we just got done talking about, the water comes in from industry. It goes through this treatment process. At the end of the treatment process, it can be too dilute. So if we weren't careful and we weren't tailoring that water to the water chemistry that is going to be the most compatible with our aquifer and our aquifer materials, we condition that water so that it is in that manner. And then the end point here is groundwater recharge that enhances water supplies and is a positive influence on water chemistry and the water quality.
Okay, thanks, Dan. And then just a couple of the key takeaways from Dan's presentation is that the geochemical testing and modeling, all of this work is to protect the groundwater quality. And the testing and modeling is site specific. So site A, site B will each have their own data sets for both of those sites. We are not finding pyrite, which is a very positive thing, like Dan said. We're excited about that. And then we'll share the results in August to inform the program development. So Dan and his team, not that they need more pressure, but they will have a lot of pressure to get all this pulled together by August. So I'm sure they will.
Oh, yeah.
Dan's like, great. And then groundwater recharge is an essential part of our recycled water program, right? Having a location where we can store water 365 days a year, all of the time, is very important to the program. Again, our goal, increase groundwater quantity and maintain or enhance groundwater quality through the groundwater recharge effort. And then just a note too, like, obviously, once we have the groundwater recharge site selected, you have groundwater recharge wells. We'll also have a monitoring network set up around so that we can monitor groundwater quality and quantity both, as we'll measure levels if they go up or down. And then we can, obviously have background water quality samples. So once we inject the water, we can understand if we are affecting the chemistry or the water quality as we sample from that monitoring network that we'll have set up. And then, like I said, next session, we'll have the background water quality, which we'll have samples from all three test wells. We'll have modeling results, that's really the one. Somebody asked the question earlier about where does the water go? How fast does it go? Which direction? That modeling results will be able to answer that question. So I think we mentioned it'd be in this presentation, but it'll actually be in August when they'll have that pulled together. And then groundwater recharge site and method. So we should have that business case evaluation wrapped up on which site and then which method we'll be using in August. So lots of work and time put into that next session. Okay.
All right, so as promised, we got into a lot more detail than the first round of discussion, which was a little higher level. So we will, let's just jump in. So curious, after kind of reviewing the packet and after Royce's conversation here now and Dan's presentation as well, what are some potential obstacles when we're thinking about implementing the groundwater recharge in Boise? And then how are these barriers addressed or overcome? So just curious from you all, or like, what are the obstacles that you see after you listen to this presentation about us going forward to implementation?
Open it up to the commission. Commissioner Morgan?
Thanks, Chair. The first one that I foresee is being a potential obstacle is the well users or water users in that area, if they're not already engaged, like doing that yesterday, just to make sure that they're kept in the loop and not, as Chair mentioned earlier, in the dark about anything and aware of what's processes are happening now and what potentially could happen. Even if it's, if we have a good idea of what site we're going to do, then only doing it at that site. But if we have the balls up in the air on all three sites, then doing it at all three sites, just to be thorough and considerate to those neighbors. Because I don't think there should be cause for worry, because what we're doing is really great and helpful, but people being impacted or change happening in your neighborhood is scary for people.
Thank you. Commissioner Collette?
Yes. So a question I have is, once we do the initial testing on the sites and we figure out what the chemical composition is, how often are we retesting, and are there going to be other other things or other changes that impact what that groundwater composition looks like?
Chair, just a quick response. We'll be required as part of our permitting process to be always monitoring and sampling groundwater quality as part of the program. So that'll be part of the kind of belt and suspenders of making sure that there's no impacts, and that's going to be a constant part of the process moving forward.
Thank you.
Commissioner Moritz?
Yeah, I'm also curious. Thank you, Chair. I also am curious about whether there are other activities, whether they be infiltration basins planned or other underground injection wells that could potentially interfere or cloud, I guess, what you're trying to do in that same basin or that same underground complex. I guess that could make it very difficult if the Boise project is the only one that's significantly new, then you have ability to compare. But if there's other things coming online at the same time, and I really don't know if there are, but it seems like it would be important to know.
Yeah, and I was noodling through a similar question, because I think the primary obstacles are not necessarily community support or understanding, but more technical, especially as we are growing in ways that we can only hazard a guess at this point. But there may be sites within the sort of area of impact of our overall monitoring system that future uses may have a greater impact than we might think of now, depending on our development patterns and other impacts from the land use moving forward. Commissioner Pagan?
Thank you, Chair. Just a thought on location of these sites. It might be a remote possibility, but thinking about the longevity of them, we do happen to have earthquakes in the state, and so maybe considering what happens if there's some sort of natural disaster, whether it's a rock slide or anything to cause a shift in the ground.
Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I had the same thinking too. I felt like I'm not as well versed with the samples, the actual dry ground samples, but I wondered if we have a shift in weather, or a shift in calamities. I wondered if would the composition change, or what if we went out farther? If there was this, I just didn't know if we were still going to take ground earth samples after the fact, after we do this testing.
Chair, maybe Dan, do you mind chiming in on that? Like if, in the event that we have a seismic event, could that potentially significantly impact geochemistry? Do you mind making a comment to that?
Yeah, certainly. So I wouldn't necessarily expect that it would. So you could have some shifting around. The sediment layers that we see in the valley are a few thousand feet thick, or they can be up to a few thousand feet thick. They're not that thick everywhere. But really what we would see is what we are seeing is that as we drill, as we go through and we have our 800 feet deep boreholes, and we've got some other information sources that show that this is fairly consistent as we go down. So what we're seeing is, by and large, that what we have observed in this within the 800 feet that we've drilled is fairly consistent all the way down. There could be, I guess if I don't want to hypothesize here, but I would think an earthquake wouldn't necessarily change the geochemistry. It certainly could, change the subsurface, or where these different layers are. It's an interesting question, and I can't really do much more than hypothesize on it.
Thank you. And then, Chair, just a quick follow-up to Commissioner Morgan's question on the drinking water wells. So we have been talking to Veolia from the get-go, and are we still meeting with them quarterly? And they have very specific concerns, and we certainly get it, and we've been very closely coordinating with them. A question that we'll have for you all in the future discussions when we get to the groundwater model is, part of the modeling is to estimate travel time and where the water's going and how long does it take to get to certain, other wells. That's probably something we'll get to in the coming presentation, and love to hear your feedback on kind of just perspectives on travel time and what's a long time, what's a short time in your mind type questions.
Commissioner Wirtz.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And this might be a question for Royce or Dan, I don't know. It has to do with the delivery method. So if it's an infiltration basin versus underground injection, does that mean potentially you would have different conditioning for the water? Is one goes through all of that earth from the surface and the other is delivered right to your target?
Yeah, right. So I can answer that. And the short answer is yes. We would have different considerations, and we're testing both the near surface materials and the materials at depth, so we can understand what we're seeing in terms of potential for either injection or infiltration, and what potential differences would exist with in the geochemical realm.
Chair. I actually had a similar question off of Commissioner Wirtz, and was wondering if that then impacts cost for what conditioning needs to be done and applied to the water to be able to go either at infiltration levels or at injection levels. Is there a huge variance in cost? Potentially.
I'll jump in, and maybe Dan, if you want to jump in as well. Considering the scale of the project and the capital investment, the O&M side of conditioning, having, it's probably pretty small.
Yeah.
But a good question, there could be some components on the treatment side, on the capital side, but conditioning is really going to come down to kind of like dosing of small chemicals or, just making sure that we're matching. So my guess is that there'll be probably minimal considering the large capital costs. But
Right.
Dan, anything to add there?
Just a little bit, and I agree 100%. There's only a few, based on what we're seeing with the pilot. There's various chemicals, but it's not a whole suite of chemicals. It's calcium hydroxides, calcium chlorides, various items like that. It would really be to what degree are we changing that? What pH are we targeting? What alkalinity are we targeting? So the incremental difference between one or the other for a more conditioned, if you will, water wouldn't be a substantial cost.
Okay, thank you both.
All right, Chair, Commissioners, thank you. That was all very helpful feedback. Appreciate everyone's input. So are there, I think we've already got to this, so this may be a little late. I think you all were already on this, but any other questions that came up after Royce and certainly Dan walked through some of the components, or do we need to clarify anything else, any of the slides that came up before our next meeting? Because as Steve mentioned, Royce meeting, we'll be getting into a lot more details in our next meeting. So just again, wanting to make sure that we have a really solid foundation and base before we go forward.
I'll start off. I have one question that may be chasing a road to nowhere. But I'm curious about the materials gained from the mineral analysis drilling. What is the sort of approximate volume of the mineral materials that you get from a drill and overall?
Yeah. The samples that we collected about a gallon of sample half a gallon to a gallon of sample from each depth interval. So we have a significant amount of we have a significant amount of soil.
And what percentage approximately of that do you use in your analysis, and what's the process for disposal of the rest?
Yeah, we use only a small portion of that. The process for the analyses. So we've got this 800-foot hole in the ground. Some of them are less than that, but just say 800 feet. What we do is identify zones where there are key areas of interest, and we'll take all of that material and aggregate it together, and then you pull off small samples of that. It's I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a small portion of the overall. When you're done with this, it's earth materials. So we would likely, we'll keep a lot of it for quite some time. So in case it ever comes up for any further evaluation with it, but at some point in time, way down the line, it can just be landfilled or spread. And any typical disposal method would work out.
Sure. I wonder if to gin up some more interest and excitement for the groundwater recharge program, some of those materials could be potentially diverted for a public arts project and like have a call out to the public to engage in that way, just to like, hey, did you know we drill 800 feet? Here's what it looks like right beneath the ground here. Let's do something with it. Thank you. Other questions? Commissioner Morgan?
Thanks, Chair. Procedurally, I know that we're talking about monitoring or like the progress of monitoring in August, but was wondering, I think it was mentioned that we'd have a site selected by August as well. Is that accurate?
Commissioner Morgan, yes, hopefully. We should have the groundwater, I mean, it's between site A and site B, so we should hopefully have enough data to have a pretty good idea.
Okay.
By August. It might be a little soon, but we're going to try.
Okay, thank you. If there is still balls up in the air, I think it would be really intriguing if by next commission meeting to be able to see a comparison of both sites and be able to like see high level criteria that you think is worth us considering to be able to help provide discussion. But if you're way beyond that point, then I'm happy to just be able to like get nitty gritty in the data.
Yeah, and Commissioner Moore, we should have all the data between the 3 different well sites and we can compare them and analyze them and then be able to, if we've made the decision, be able to explain why and get your opinion, yeah.
Commissioner Moritz?
Thank you. Clarifying, I guess, do we know, or do you know that you only need 1 well site at this point, or is it possible you'll need more?
I was looking at Dan to see if he'd answer this one. Dan's got a lot of secret information. He only tells me little things here and there. But that is part of it, to figure out how much water you can put in each injection site and whether that would be enough to accommodate whatever that quantity is, and whether you could do it on one site or if you would need an additional sites in the future.
And depending on how much the program expanded potentially too, you might have to expand and once you hit those thresholds.
And Commissioner, I know we have to also calculate how many, if it was injection, how many injection sites would we need? If it's 6 or 8, 3, 2, yeah.
Some other questions, comments, concerns?
Okay, Chair, Commission members, just a genuine thank you for the conversation today. And I would like to, as I mentioned earlier, perhaps just close with just a quick gut check from the commission members on how'd we do. I know there was a bit of a restart because we missed the last meeting, and so the timing was a bit clunky. But it's been helpful in the past in thinking through with Melissa. You know, we'll regroup as a city team to make sure that. But again, going back, we want to make sure that we're delivering the content in a way that is helpful for you all. It's a good amount of depth. There's a thoroughness to it, but also that you feel like you have ample opportunity to discuss, to think on things, to come prepared to the meeting. And so I'd love to open it up to you all to just, if there's thoughts on how we can do it better for our next quarterly meeting, whether it's the content ahead of time or the discussion questions during the meeting, particularly new commission members, curious your reactions from this first meeting. And we are all ears to how we can continue to evolve this to make sure that we're maximizing you all's expertise and background, and that the city, our team, is certainly getting the feedback that we need from you all. So would welcome any input.
Awesome, thank you. Let's start with Commissioner Collette.
Thanks, Chair Gravets. And I know positive comments aren't necessarily constructive, but honestly, I didn't really have many questions tonight because I think between the packet of information that was sent out and the way the presentation was presented, I think you guys did a fantastic job. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Other input from the commission? Commissioner Pagan?
I'll just say, thank you, Chair. I'll just say, because you asked specifically for
Yeah.
the new members, I appreciated it getting it a week ahead of time. Having a lot of travel in my job, it's nice to have the time to look at it and digest it.
Great. Chair, Commissioner, thanks for that feedback. Appreciate that.
Commissioner Thornfeld?
Thank you, Chair. I thought it's a lot of information, but it was very easily digestible. And I obviously don't have a lot of experience, with all of this. So I thought it was really open and I was able to understand a lot of it. So thank you.
Great. Chair, Commissioner, thank you.
And just checking back in with, it looks like Commissioner had her hand down then. I would say that I didn't have a whole lot of questions. I think that there was a lot of information. And so my only real concern is that we are useful to staff and to the city in holding this meeting and providing the kind of input that increases the productivity and the overall product that you all put out.
Chair, I'll chime in. Absolutely. I mean, I've got a couple notes here. Thinking about other wells or other projects in the area, I don't know that we thought about that per se, and I don't know if there are any, but we're certainly going to ask the question because that can have an impact on water quality that may not be being caused by us, but we'd want to know for sure if there are other projects. So that's just one example of we need to do our homework there and figure that out. So thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, and Chair and Commission members, I'd also say just anecdotally, a lot of value on city side, just even in preparing for these, preparing the packet, I think makes us ask questions differently, look at things differently. And then, as we mentioned, Steve, the team are taking lots of notes. So it's the onus is on us then again to bring that value back to you all in the next meeting and say, here's what we heard from you all. Here's how it shifted. Here's how it factored into the planning. And so I think going forward, though, let's continue this conversation. But it's important for us to bring that back and let you all see how that input has factored into the planning. So yes, it would echo Steve's comments that it's been really helpful, the discussion, the dialogue, the input. But again, let's continue to refine as we go forward. And if we're off base, we need to tweak something, we definitely want to do that.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I'll speak for myself and not for the whole commission, but I just want to ensure that the relationship that we have between the commission and staff is as reciprocal and challenging and rewarding as possible. So I, at least for myself, wouldn't hesitate to answer any challenges or step up to any asks that you might have, and at least make an effort to do more on my part for my service.
Chair, I
anything-
really appreciate that. And I would also add, like, if you all are hearing stuff in the community, please don't hesitate to bring it up. And I know several folks already did, but at the beginning of those meetings, whether it's related to recycled water or not, it's always a good barometer to hear what you're hearing, because we don't necessarily hear that. Bringing up the energy bag, there is some confusion, but it's great to reinforce, like, hey, we're still hearing it. Well, okay, we need to double down our efforts on explaining what exactly is happening. So please don't hesitate to give us that feedback. It's really helpful.
And Chair, Commissioner, commission members, one other thing that I'd add to that point, Chair, I know initially when we kind of did the reset, one of the things that we added in for each quarter was potential upcoming opportunities to get more involved. So I'll work with Melissa and the team to make sure that's part of the packet. Like, here's the standard meeting, but here's some additional ways that we'd love. I think when the watershed was doing their kind of open houses, I think several commissioners attended that and was hugely valuable as well. So thank you for that point. We'll make sure that's part of the packet, as well as some additional opportunities for commissioners that want to be involved kind of above and beyond these commission meetings. So thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Anything else from the commission? Commissioner Morgan.
Chair, just gratitude for the Public Works Department. You guys are amazing.
The best team in the city. Shh, don't tell the others. All right. Well, if there is nothing else, then is there any other business to come before the commission?
Chair, I just had a couple of quick updates.
Sure.
The Repair Cafe we had this past week, if you didn't get a chance to come out, it was another really successful Repair Cafe. Thank you to Commissioner Ellis for coming out. It continues to grow slowly but surely, and we're just getting all these positive responses, and the team just does such a good job of setting it all up. So if you get a chance at the next one, come down, bring, one of our kids brought 3 socks and that had holes in them, and whether that, I won't say whether they were clean or not, but they were very helpful in getting them repaired. So the staff that works they're just wonderful. So just want to report that the Repair Cafe is continuing, and they're still a big success. And then also we're getting some really good news on the grant front, federal grants. We're getting grants from foundations. The Bloomberg Foundation recently gave us a $50,000 grant for youth climate engagement. And they're allowed to be, I think, let out by, I want to get this right, I think it's between 500 and 5,000 per grant application. And I think you have to be 15 years or older to make a proposal. And we're going to be opening that up to the youth in Boise. And we have $50,000, and if it goes well enough, then we have access to another round of grant opportunities. I'm going to say it's about 100,000. So really excited about that. Another grant we got recently was our EV infrastructure grant through the, I think it's through the infrastructure bill. There's so many different programs. But that's going to be in the neighborhood of about $5 million, building out over the next several years of EV infrastructure in Boise, and trying to do it very systematically. There's an education component to it. So just reporting back, and we can get a list of all the different grant opportunities that we have been awarded, other opportunities that we've applied for, and then other opportunities we're tracking. If you're interested in that, maybe we can add that to our next packet. But trying to just leverage a lot of that funding, federal funding in particular, but also some of the nonprofits that are coming to the table with some really cool programs. I think that's it.
Right, and I'm remembering from the on the EV front, is it Nampa or Caldwell? They have a mandatory minimum EV charging stations for parking lot size. Does Boise have a similar regulation? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Chair, I'll have to go back and check. I think we do, but let me ask.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, with that, I would, Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. Steve, you mentioned about the Repair Cafe. I just saw an email today and I sent it to Catherine Milner and Gabe Brenner. It's a tool cafe. So in addition to having repair cafes, it was a city, it's somewhere in the US, I wish I could remember which one it was, had these sheds or days where you can go in and you can rent all these different types of tools to repair. So it's kind of this add-on to the Repair Cafe. So I thought they would think that's pretty cool as an idea to look into. I sent it to him.
Awesome, thank you. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Pagan.
I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second, Commissioner Ernst?
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.